Okay,
You're live.
I will call to order this hearing of April 24th, 2025. I'll write that down for you. For case file Z0067-24, request for approval of an event facility and wine tasting. My name is Joe Turner. I'm the county's hearings officer. Start by saying I'm not a county employee. I'm licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the Board of Commissioners. I say that so you know you're getting a somewhat independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct the hearings and make decisions about certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I'm not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the law. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with the Board of Commissioners and Planning Commission to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. Excuse me. As a hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker. I believe I am unbiased with regard to this application. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. But anyone has the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county's website. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. Then if anybody else wants to testify in support of the application, they may do so. And then anyone who wants to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns. That should cover everybody who wants to say something about this application. You'll fall into one of those categories. Once everyone's had an initial opportunity to testify, I will give staff and the applicant alone the opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include any new evidence, I will give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and announce what I'm going to do without taking further public testimony. Generally, I will issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the record. I'll send my decision to the county. The county will send it to parties of record. So anybody who testifies orally or in writing before the close of the record will be sure and receive a copy of my decision when it's issued. If you decide you don't need to testify but still want to receive a copy of my decision, you can contact staff and they'll put you on the list for that purpose. Anyone with an interest in this application may offer relevant oral or written testimony. However, testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria, which are set out in the staff report. Also, please don't repeat testimony offered by yourself or earlier witnesses. This isn't a popularity contest. Whether everybody loves it or everybody hates it is not an issue I get to consider. The only issue before me is whether the application does or does not comply with the applicable approval criteria. However, it's important that you make your best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county, but may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. However, LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to preserve your right to appeal, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me with enough specificity that people can understand what the issue is. If you feel you need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, state law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose. But if anybody else wants me to hold the record open for a longer period or to continue the hearing, you must make that request before the close of the hearing today. Also, my decisions must comply with state law that requires that I issue a final written decision in this case within 150 days after the application was filed. So there's some limit to how long I can continue the hearing or hold the record open. Ms. Lord, I can't remember. Does the Clackamas County generally hold the record open for an additional week regardless? Some jurisdictions do, some don't, and I can't keep straight which one this is.
We've typically in the past have done 1 week for any new, if requested, 1 week for
if requested, but some jurisdictions are automatically holding it open after. That's okay. Thank you.
No, if the applicant waives that last week for the final
Yeah.
argument, then we can just close it.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to check on that. That concludes my introduction then, and the Lord's going to tell us how the online process will work, how you can participate that way.
Great. Thank you. This public hearing is conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their microphones muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will use the raise hand button. For attendees on PC or iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, either at the top or bottom of your screen, depending on your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. Staff will call upon you when it's time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you've provided your testimony, your microphone will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email your written testimony to myself at mlord@clackamas.us, mlord@clackamas.us, or you can mail it to Clackamas County's Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City 97045. My contact email address is also available on the webpage where you found the link for today's hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's final decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive a copy of the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address to myself by emailing it to me at mlord@clackamas.us or by entering it into the Zoom chat function during today's hearing. And I have a small PowerPoint prepared today regarding the application, if we're ready.
Yep.
Okie doke. I'll just share my screen. Okay, and so my name is Melissa Lord. I am going to be presenting the land use application file Z0067-24, which is a conditional use application for a home occupation to host events. The planner who reviewed the application and prepared the staff report is not in the office today, and so today I'll just be presenting a higher level overview of the application as a whole and some key points taken out of the initial staff report that the county had issued. For starters, just generally about the property, this property is around 37 acres in size, and it's located off of Central Point Road. The property is zoned exclusive farm use, or EFU. The applicants are requesting.
Go back in a second.
Yes.
I may be reading that wrong, but isn't the facility proposed on the property to the south, what you've highlighted there? There's two
Yes,
tracks.
it is. In fact, you're right. It's this portion right here.
Okay,
This is one of the tax lots involved, and the other one where the facility will be is right here. Thank you.
thank you. Just wanted to check.
Yep. The applicants are requesting to operate a home occupation to host events such as weddings, family reunions, corporate events, and the like. They're asking to be authorized to have events up to 300 people per event, no more than one event per day. And recently, the applicant modified the proposal to request a maximum of 3 events per week. That new request has been uploaded to the website as Exhibit 22. It was just received yesterday. Events will be held in a new or proposed building on site, which I have an image of in a couple of slides here. I think it's important to note that there is some commentary in the application about wine tasting. The wine tasting and wine tasting events would be separate from the events we're discussing at this conditional use hearing. Weddings fall into a different category. So a winery itself would be a type 2 land use in the EFU zoning district, and wine tasting, wine club activities, winery tours, things like that are all accessory to a winery, but separate from this wedding proposal. Initially, the planning staff had recommended denial due to a few areas of the zoning code that were not addressed in the application materials. I'll talk about each of those or some of those later in my presentation. This here is just an image from one of the site plans submitted by the applicant. This is an overview, an overview of the whole property. The white area in the middle here is generally the location where grapes will be planted associated with this winery. That's my understanding. It's about 20 acres of land that will be dedicated to grapes, some of which have been planted, some of which are still to be planted. In the southwestern corner of the site along Central Point Road is the proposed event building, which will also dual as their wine tasting room in the future, and then the associated parking. I've got a zoomed in picture of that, so we'll go to the next slide. This is the wine tasting and event space area. So we've got our parking along Central Point Road and along the shared access driveway, which is at the bottom of our screen. You can see with green little dots, this is a hedge that they're proposing to plant to help visually screen the event building from properties to the east, properties or the driveway to the south. So this is generally the layout of the proposal. 3D images of the proposed building were supplied with the land use application. This is just one of the few angles of the building. This would be likely the look of the event space if approved. So Clackamas County Planning Department, we reviewed all relevant zoning and development ordinance sections that pertain to this application. A full analysis of each of these sections was written in the staff report, which was added to the record as exhibit number 1 and prepared by Eric Forsell. As I mentioned, a home occupation to host events is considered a conditional use in the EFU zoning district, which is why this is a conditional use hearing today. Some of the areas that Eric found the applicants were deficient in, I'll talk about just in a few slides here, within the next few slides here. So the first is one of the standards is that the applicant must demonstrate that the proposed use complies with subsection 1007-07 and the safety of the transportation system, and that it's adequate to serve this use. Subsection 1007, it relates to transportation concurrency, and conditional uses are exempt from that. So we've got no problem there. I think the issue was that the applicant hadn't demonstrated how the safety of the transportation system was adequate. In response to that comment or that finding, the applicant last week did submit new evidence into the record. It's been added as exhibit number 19. In that package was a traffic study completed by a traffic engineer. Related to this particular criteria, some of the highlights pulled from the traffic study include a finding that the sight distance is adequate at the intersection. Sight distance meaning a clear vision area when you look left, when you look right from the intersection, there is enough space to see. Second from the traffic study was information about reviewing traffic data for the last 5 years, and that the data shows there was no significant crash trends that may be indicative of any design deficiencies in the road itself. The traffic engineer did not make any recommendations for mitigations related to any crash data, and so this piece of information was submitted in response to the traffic safety or the road safety. In addition to that, already in the staff report, the initial staff report, the Clackamas County Engineering Division also had reviewed the application and had recommended, if approved, 2 particular conditions of approval that I think also speak to traffic safety. The first was paving a portion of the driveway that would access the site, and the second is maintaining the clear vision area or these sight distances in either direction of the driveway entrance. So I think both of those help to address the safety as well. Next are 2 criteria that relate to each other. The applicant needs to demonstrate that the proposal is not going to alter the character of the surrounding area in a way that would substantially limit, impair, or preclude the uses of surrounding properties for both primary uses allowed and dwellings. Primary uses in this case are predominantly farming and forestry operations, and Section 806 of our code also requires us to look at the impacts of dwellings on the surrounding area as well. It is, I think, important to note here that it's not the criteria is that the impacts won't be substantial. Not that there won't be impacts, but they won't be substantial in a way that would preclude or impair or limit folks from using their property. Initially in the staff report, Eric had found that there was a minimal discussion of how a 300-person daily wedding event or event would take place and how it would impact the traffic. Since then, the applicant has reduced the scope of the proposal. Rather than requesting authorization to have weddings every day of the week, they're only asking for a maximum of 3 days a week throughout the year. The staff report also noted that the applicant hadn't addressed the use of Central Point Road and how farms on that road might be impacted by these wedding events. There were issues perhaps with the noise management or lack of noise management and sound study, and lack of information pertaining to lighting details, and how that might, how any lights shining onto other neighboring properties might be addressed. In response to those comments or findings, the applicant submitted, again in Exhibit 19, what they've called the surrounding area analysis. The analysis in the documents submitted include a noise study. The noise study does include findings that all of the maximum decibel readings at the property line can be met as proposed. And they've also included a couple recommendations to ensure compliance with that decibel limit. The traffic study indicated that the roadway is adequate to support these additional trips on Central Point Road. The applicant did provide lighting fixture detail, and specifically light fixtures that have a shield on them in order to not shine on neighboring properties. And a more perhaps robust is maybe not the right word, but a more obvious landscaping plan related to that hedge that we saw in the site plan drawing, just with specifics of which type of landscaping they'll be planting there and how it's going to in fact act as a hedge and screening. In a similar vein, another review criteria that we must look at is that the use may be approved only where it will not force a significant change in accepted farm or forest practices, or it won't significantly increase the cost of accepted farm or forest practices on surrounding lands that are devoted to farm or forest use. And so in the applicant's submittal and their surrounding area analysis, they did provide, they did demonstrate what on surrounding properties, what farm and residential uses there are. They discussed that the shared driveway where the event space will be accessed is not used for farm or forest practices, and it is not used currently to access any commercial farming activities. And in addition, I make note here that the applicants would be required to pave a portion of that driveway approach per county engineering. That I think is important here because it will reduce any type of dust, gravel, dirt that might be tracked off of the property onto Central Point Road, which could impact the usage of the road as well. So that concludes my presentation. I'm sure you have questions and I hope I have answers, but I will stop my screen share here.
Thank you, Ms. Lord.
Yeah.
I just had a couple of questions for the applicant, nothing for staff. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Smith, I understand you're representing the applicant.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. And I want to share my screen here if we can.
And can you say your name and address for the record too, just so it's...
Tyler Smith, Oregon State Bar 075-287, address 181 North Grant Street, Suite 212, Canby, Oregon 97013. Okay.
Are you ready?
Thank
Oh, you're sharing your screen. That's right.
There we go. Okay, is that being shared?
It's in the process. And while we're waiting for, there it goes. Can you submit this as an exhibit as well, just so it has...
Yes, sir. This is Exhibit 2. All of the things
Exhibit
I'll
2,
show.
thank you.
Yes, all the things I'll
Exhibit
show.
2 of the county's exhibits, or is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a little confusing right now. Clackamas County labels everything submitted as another
Yeah.
exhibit, and they've got it labeled as 19, but it's actually Exhibit 2 to our submittals.
okay.
It's
So it's the county's exhibit 19, that's what I needed.
right, and in our packet, it's Exhibit 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so first, I'll just address a couple of preliminary things. And I thank you, Ms. Lord, for your presentation. I know the original staff report was not yours. And Hearings Officer Turner, that was prepared back probably in December and early January for what was planned to be a January hearing. The applicant at that time was pro se, had done all the preparation and stuff on his own. And they saw Mr. Forrestal's analysis, and then I've helped them since. So a lot of that was preliminary, and some of what Mr. Forrestal had put in there is actually inaccurate. I don't blame Ms. Lord at all, but I want to try and clarify some of that because obviously this is not an appeal. This is a first time. So his preliminary analysis that he wrote in early January or December has drastically changed, what's in the record and what evidence is there now. So I want to go through most of those things today. One of the first things to note is, as Ms. Lord mentioned, yes, this application is simply for the land use application for the home use to host events. The applicant can already grow grapes. There's vineyards already planted there. They can already make their wine. They can already have tastings on site. They can already build an agricultural building. They can already park cars out there. So when we're analyzing, any impacts, again, the only shared road is the entryway. And there aren't really commercial farming activities in the surrounding lots that we've identified. Exhibit 8 identifies where the surrounding lots were. These are all mostly hobby farms. As we talk about in the land use world, hobby farm is where there might be a cow or some sheep or some chickens or a crop or two or a giant garden or something like that, but it's not commercially viable to where it would have the $80,000 revenue criteria or anything close to that. So that's covered, and I'll cover that as well. But again, my clients never really asked for to have events every day of the week. So Miss Lord was on this when she got started taking over and asked us, and we pointed out that really all we need is 3 events per week. You're not going to have weddings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. You're not going to have much for corporate events or anything like that. So it wasn't necessarily much a change, but we wanted to clarify. It definitely affected the SDCs that the county was going to impose. So we wanted to clarify that. That's all we're asking for. It was never contrary to that. It was just we'd asked for to have it whenever we needed to have it. So if somebody does want to have a wedding on a Tuesday night, we'd want the 3 events to be able to have it on a Tuesday night, although how unlikely that would be. So that's really what it is we didn't want to be limited to only be able to have it on a certain day of the week. So we've asked just three of these events per week would be what the limitation would be, both for purposes of the land use, could be conditioned for the SDCs and the impacts, those kinds of things. That's all relevant to the scope of what would be taking out of there. That would be the maximum. Secondly, the events out there in the winery is not going to be a winery that's going to be, open to the public, for instance, from 3 to 6 every day, like some wineries are. It's going to be members only. The events will be either special events or member only events. So this will not be your traditional retail wine where people can just roll in and there might be somebody serving tastings at whatever prescribed times. So that also is just a background fact that is material and matters to the impact. It'll be, would be less impactful and less traffic than just a generally open to the public winery. The next thing I want to point out is this site plan. I've got this showing on here. You can see where the house in the upper left-hand corner of that site map is the Strava's house. The white lines are where it's planted. And this is the part that Eric had gotten, Mr. Forsell had gotten, it was preliminary and it was changed to accommodate some of the neighbors' requests. You can see that the corner area there between the driveway and Central Point no longer has anything in it. That parking lot has been moved farther back on the property. And the turn from the driveway into the Strava's property has been moved back. It's now 200 feet off of Central Point Road, which helps. It's more than the traffic engineers recommended. It's more than the code requires, but it helps with neighbors. It helps with pushing it to a location the neighbors were more desirous of. So we wanted to note that. And again here, I don't know if I'll show this picture again, but they requested and/or required parking was up to 100 people to accommodate the maximum attendees of 300. The common, traffic and land use usage is an average of 3 people per car, which would accommodate, if you had 100 cars, you could accommodate 300 people, and it's sort of the estimate there. So that's what's accommodated with those 100 parking spots in the space provided, measured and engineered out. So next, I will go. And Mr. Forsell had commented. It was essentially, as Ms. Lord had mentioned, there was essentially a denial recommended because there was a lack of information. Most of the criteria, as you probably have seen in his report, since it's the only formal report, were, yes, this criteria is met. And then there were a handful of them that we don't have enough information. And so he had recommended denial. So we've addressed those. There's 8 major points where we found that he had made that commentary that, hey, we don't have enough information here to know this. And so one of those was the traffic. So we've hired Ard Engineering, Mike Ard, who's a well-known in Clackamas County, done a handful of these, even for me. The traffic impact study, full traffic impact study of the area, of the intersection of Central Point Road. And that is included as the applicant's Exhibit 1, which is a part of the county's Exhibit 19. We included the revised site map, the aerial photos, the engineered parking plan, and the lot identification. That's Exhibit 2 to the packet. A couple of those pictures were the ones we were just showing. We've included a professional noise study. Now, obviously, this is right now just a farm field. So you'll see the professional noise study did calculations and averages without actually having anything there. But we would note, for the purposes of noise, everything is going to be inside the wine tasting room, except for what would be wedding ceremonies. People would typically like to have that out in such a scenic vineyard. Everything else will be, the music and all of that will be inside the building. It'd be the ceremony that would be outside. Now, the noise study, when you review it, you'll see that it analyzed 3 potential events. It even analyzed music outside, analyzed the ceremony outside, analyzed people talking outside and inside. But in reality, the noise, the music for any kind of a post-wedding event, like a reception or whatever, would be inside the building. The inside the building is going to be constructed and built with sound proofing, insulation and soundproofing inside there. It's going to be, you'll see in the noise study, and Mr. Strava will talk about how it's going to be electronically controlled to not exceed decibel levels inside the building that would even get close to the maximums and the allowable amounts from the noise study. Exhibit 4 is the lighting and mitigation plan. Mr. Forsall had, and some of the neighbors had talked about lighting. Yes, shielded lighting will be used on all exterior lights, which is the standard. That's what we've got, the lighting that has been selected and would be used on the building, and the Exhibit 4 shows that lighting and lighting mitigation plan. Again, the landscaping also adds to that lighting mitigation. Exhibit 5 has the proof of the water availability. Mr. Forsall and some of the neighbors have talked about water. That engineer that wrote Exhibit 5, we'll talk about that. He explained how this area is not a water sensitive area. That engineer was named Pacific Hydrogeology, Exhibit 5, and they analyzed the water in the area and the availability of water. There's already an existing well, so there's plenty of water in the area, as that demonstrates. Exhibit 6, this was not in the original application, I don't think either, which is the actual approval for a septic system on this site. So Clackamas County has already approved the septic system for this site. You can see that preliminary approval and the permit application and approval in Exhibit 6. Proof of garbage and utility services. That's Exhibit 7 is the garbage service. And Exhibit 8 is the surrounding area maps, the identification of the surrounding lots, what's taking place on those lots, and an analysis of what farming and forestry practices are either on those lots, but realistically, none of them, like I said, are in commercial production. What could be on them, what's common in the areas, and if somebody was to somehow try and convert one of these, fantastic lots, but they're not in commercial production, to some sort of commercial lot, what they would probably do there. This area is mostly cattle or grass seed or hay. In the neighboring areas, not too far away, is some nurseries, and what their farming and forestry practices would be if they converted to some and tried to do some sort of commercial production. So with that said, those addressed Mr. Forsall's concerns in the areas where he had deficiencies. And I'll go over a few pieces of that. But before I do, I'm going to go over a few of those exhibits and some of the highlights. I would like to introduce my clients, Mr. and Mrs. Strava, who will be the proprietors of the winery. I'm going to turn my camera around here. They'd like to talk about their project a little bit.
Hello.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Morning.
Thank you for meeting us today. We are proud owners of the property that we purchased 4 years ago. A
Mr.
place
Strava, can
that-
you give us your name and mailing address as well? Just, it's in the record, but we just need it.
Definitely. Go ahead.
Christian and Mia Strava, address is 22322 South Central Point Road, Oregon City, Oregon 97045.
And Mr. Strava, the county has spelled your first name two different ways, with an CH and with a CRI. Which one's correct?
CR, no H.
Thank you.
Welcome.
That was the only questions I had at this point. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we fell in love with this property 4 years ago, and we immediately felt like home. When me and my wife first walked on the land, we both know exactly the property we want, where we want to bring our vision. It's a wonderful land, and we love it very much. Our vision is, from the start, we dream of creating a winery paired with an event space, a place where agriculture, hospitality, and community can come together. We were drawn not only to the land's beauty, but also to the history that the previous owner shared with us through his oldest son. It inspires us deeply, and now we hope to create a story of our own, something meaningful we can pass for generation. What we want to accomplish so far, in the last 4 years, we made improvements to the property. We planted 16 acres of wine grapes, with more acres planted as we continue to grow. We have thoughtfully mapped out where the tasting room will offer the most breathtaking view for guests to enjoy the landscape. All development have been approached with care for the land, our neighbors, and future sustainability. We are committed to ensure the tasting room and event space will enhance the character of the property and not alter it. The design will complement the natural landscape and preserve the charm and rural identity in the area. Our goal is to create a space that feels like it belongs, beautiful, functional, and respectful of the surrounding. I prepare all these notes to make sure we express our love and gratitude to this land that we acquired. Why this conditional use permit matters? The permit will allow us to move forward with establishing a tasting room, event space. The space will not only serve as the heart of our winery operations, but also a gathering place for our community. And our promise to the community is we want to build something that's more than a business, something that brings people together, a space of celebration, cute moments, and share memories. We are committed to maintain the rural character and beauty of the area. We aim to support other local businesses offering local food, featuring local.
Mr. Strava, I appreciate all that, but the why you're doing this and what you're planning to do as far as supporting the community, really isn't relevant. I'd rather focus on the approval criteria. So I ask you to move on to another issue.
We really love this dream, and we work together to prepare everything as in good faith evidence for this application. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Strabo.
Okay, here's Mr. Turner. I'll go back to some of the approval criteria. I'd like to go in this original staff report from January. Mr. Forsall, page 10 and 11 really talked about vehicular.
Mr. Smith, can you turn your camera? Thank you.
Yes.
I think the microphone's on the front there.
Yeah.
It's harder to hear you.
Mr. Forsall had really talked a lot on page 10 and 11 about the traffic criteria, safety, those issues, which are, relevant approval criteria. And so I highlight on that the executive summary here, which is Exhibit 1, page 3 of the engineering report, which notes that the intersections are projected to operate acceptably under Clackamas County standards. There was the traffic counts done, as you can see in the report. The traffic counts were way under the capacities. There were no operational mitigations necessary or recommended according to engineering standards. He examined the crash data. You'll see one of the neighbors apparently almost got in a crash with the school bus one time. Well, the actual historical crash data was analyzed from a professional standpoint, and there were no significant crash trends. The professionals also said no new traffic signals or turn lanes were recommended. They're simply too low of volume, both on Central Point Road and coming off of the new driveway. The engineer pointed out that adequate sight distance was available in each direction for safe and efficient operation under the engineering standards. So, page 10 and 11 of Mr. Forsall's original report are really heavily covered there. Moving the turn back to 200 feet from Central Point Road avoids queuing, having plenty of space in the parking lot and on the lot for turnarounds, satisfies the fire and safety standards from the fire department and fire turn lanes. Having 2 lanes of traffic is also satisfies fire requirements and traffic safety requirements. Having 2 lanes of traffic on that driveway. There will be a gate that is installed there so that the 2 neighbors that share the use of this driveway will not have lost traffic or winery guests going back into their properties. Will also prevent high speeds since it's turning on from the winery onto the driveway and then Central Point Road. So from the engineering perspective, Mr. Ard's engineering report points out that there was no significant safety hazards identified with site access location nor the intersection that's created between this driveway and South Central Point Road. He talks about here I've highlighted some of the key points. The total traffic volume on South Central Point Road during the peak hours was below 200 vehicles during those peak periods. That's below even the threshold in which the curves become undefined. So the volume of potentially conflicting traffic is just so low. These adequate sight distances were available. Just simply volume to capacity on that road, and then any addition from this is so low that it's not warranted any kind of mitigation, traffic lanes, lights, any of that. So his engineering report talks about how the sight lines are adequate and safe in both directions for operation of that site access. And that's in his engineering report, Exhibit 1 of our submittal. Next, I'll go to the sound. Here, the sound study locations are identified in Exhibit 3 And I've taken an excerpt on page 5 of that exhibit to demonstrate here. You can see where the cars sound was identified, the event space identified, and the green highlighted area with the dotted lines would be where the wedding event ceremony would take place. And if you had speakers there, Mr. Strava had pointed out that the speakers are going to be the what do you call them? Pendant. They're pendant speakers, which actually direct the sound to the ground. And it's more of a contained sound externally than a standard speaker that sits on a stand and projects horizontally. And because again, the nature of this is only the ceremonies are going to be outside. Any kind of an event is actually going to be inside. But again, as I mentioned, you'll see if you analyze this noise report, the noise engineers analyzed multiple different things: an outdoor ceremony with loudspeakers, guest conversations outdoors, indoor events with windows and doors closed, indoor events with windows and doors open, and then cars and traffic. And every one of those scenarios was well below the applicable criteria of noise production in that area. And so it would comply. I mean, bottom line is that it complies with if conditioned like that and as designed, will comply with the Clackamas County Zoning Development Ordinance standards. Mr. Strava is also has I guess you would say, the technological features on his planned, I guess you'd say, sound system inside the building, which will have the capacity to technologically limit the decibels of the system. And that's also planned. It's part of the system that he's got designed and expected to install inside the building. So that will also assist and have some insurance or ensure that that noise will stay at the proper levels, regardless of what kind of event or which event it would be inside of the building. Next, I wanted to highlight the lighting. Mr. Forsaw had mentioned the lighting and that lighting standards, and there hadn't been any evidence submitted to prove that the lighting would comply. Again, shielded lighting. We've got the examples here of what would be used on Exhibit 4. Downward projecting shielded lighting so that the neighbors will not see any direct light. Obviously, the goal of shielding is that no direct light will project off of an applicant's property. Well, here, because the winery itself, the building is sort of, on the southern edge, but in the center of the property, it would have to go pretty, shielded lighting, and there's no chance of light escape off property boundaries when you have shielded lighting. So it will be directed down. It'll also be the hours of operation here are discussed in the application, but there will be light shutoffs. There will not be allowed to have any event, any visitors past 10 o'clock. Everything's going to be set to shut off at 10 o'clock. So there will be some warnings given. The people that are using the facility, renting it out or having an event there, will be told 10 o'clock is going to be the shutdown time. Now, the lights and things like that for the parking lot will be phased so that people can leave safely and drive away safely. But again, they're shielded lights so that it complies with the ZDO. I mentioned this before, the water feasibility. Mr. Forsaw had mentioned there hadn't been enough analysis of water feasibility. Again, this can be conditioned, but there's already been the analysis of some of the more recent applications in the area, the existing well, This is not a sensitive groundwater area, which means there's plenty of water in the area. They've got their well. And, this, again, can be just conditioned to have this approval. But it should not, this water engineer pointed out that it will not be a problem. Plenty of water in the area. Next, again, we talked about this. Exhibit 6 shows Clackamas County's septic system approval. It's already been inspected and approved last fall. Exhibit 6 shows that. So that is covered. Mr. Forstall mentioned that. The surrounding area analysis. Again, we pointed out here, you can see the surrounding area on Exhibit A to this, which is, you can see greenhouses down here in the south.
What
Which
is that radius? How big
that is 500 meters or yards. I forget if it was
Okay.
yards from there. So it covers every single surrounding property, and some it goes one lot behind. There's a river off to the east there. And you can see to the north there are some hay fields. But again, the dwellings inside of that are all covered and addressed in the surrounding area analysis. I believe that's a marijuana grow. Oh, it's not there anymore. I guess that's been removed. Okay. So that was the area that's been identified. The tax lots marked on here to shown for purposes of the written portion of that surrounding area analysis for reference. And ultimately, as it can be pointed out, the non-farm activity that will be taking place on the winery site is essentially foot traffic, cars, and maybe some chairs being put out for a wedding. So, the analysis of what is going to be taking place there that's not the farming activity, and how will that affect the practices on any neighboring farms, their commercial practices, their costs, is shown here and discussed, but it's negligible, right? There's nobody going to be hauling hay or animals on the driveway. The tractors are not going to be, there's not going to be any neighboring tractors driving on the shared driveway or on the property. There's not, this isn't an airport where there's planes flying in, which has happened sometimes on EFU property. It's people driving on, parking, going inside the winery, maybe having a wedding with chairs out in the lawn and enjoying the view of the vineyard. It's a slight upward sloping hill. So if I go back to these maps, lot 304 is lower than 305. 305 is lower than 300. It's slight upward looking. So where the facility will be, I'll go all the way back. Where the facility will be on Exhibit 2, you can see a picture of the house. We'll be looking upwards towards the vineyard, and the events would be located on the back side or the north side of the structure in between the building and the vineyard. And so that's the best view. You'll be a nice, pretty structure, which again could be there anyways. It could be a barn. You could have a wine storage facility, an ag building that could be built there in the exact same size or whatever, and only ag use. So it doesn't really change what could already be there without having some sort of an impact on farm or forest uses. But again, the events would be in between the building and the vineyard, because that's probably the most scenic and pristine viewpoint to hold that. And again, nothing's emitting off property. Cars go to Central Point, where it's been shown there's plenty of capacity for traffic. I mean, that would be any other farmers that are farther away would be getting their product or produce or animals onto Central Point Road, and the capacity has been shown to be plenty. So the impacts on any farm or forest uses are in a sense mysterious, but we've analyzed what the surrounding area analysis is taken from OHSU, the standard horticultural practices, husbandry practices for those types of uses, and how and when they plant, till, cut, etc. So those are all in there, and that process has been approved by LUBA as the appropriate for identifying the surrounding area uses and any impacts. Then I believe it's the last one before any questions. That was the last excerpt that I wanted to point out. I'd be happy to answer any questions. But again, we're looking at just the approval of 3 of these size events as a maximum per week. There could be, they could have wine club events on other times, but they'd be much smaller. Just, handful of people, 20, 30 people, something like that on other days. So these bigger events, we want just asking to have the approval to have up to 3. In reality, I told the Stravas, you'd have to be the best salesman in the world to ever have more than that, because there's plenty of these in the area. There, one of the neighbors had some concerns about, somehow this changing. There's already, I'll list out some of the wineries in the area. King's Raven is about a mile up the street. Christopher Bridge is probably maybe a mile and a half away. Villa Contalina is right next to King's Raven, about a mile north. Brightwater Event Center is probably about a mile as the crow flies to the east, right on 213. So that's just places within, probably a mile of here have other wineries, event centers, facilities. So this is pretty common. I mean, we are in the state of Oregon, Pinot capital of the world. So winery and viticulture is very common and growing. As Mr. Forstall mentioned in his analysis, having a tasting room, having an event center is sort of a normalized accessory use to a winery in today's day and age. So it's sort of expected and understood to be associated with a winery.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Could you go back to your close-up of the parking area?
Yes,
That's
sir.
in there. That one's perfect. What are those dark lines on either side of the driveway and then the access road? The black lines.
That's just demonstrative to show where the road would be, the boundaries.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. The noise study talks about outdoor ceremonies. I understood you to say that this analysis included music with those outdoor ceremonies. Is that in the study?
I don't think that was the speakers. The use of the speakers was in the study. I don't think there was there's not going to be receptions and things out there. So here
Right.
we'll go to that. So the first column did have the loudspeakers there, but for the ceremony, that's more talking. Maybe somebody singing a song in a wedding ceremony, but that would be, about it. It's not going to be dance. It's not going to be your typical reception dance
Sure.
parties
I understood
outside.
that, but I was thinking wedding march and whatever, when they walk out, the music then, and as you noted, somebody might be singing or other music during the ceremony. Okay. And then the other issue, dust mitigation, the lack of a plan for dust mitigation was noted in the staff report, and I just wondered if you had the opportunity to address that.
Yes. 1, asphalting the driveway. 2, the trees and the landscaping plan. 3, some of the parking will be asphalted and some will be rock. My client tells me now the plan is that all of the parking to be asphalted, at least eventually, and the road, yeah. So
the entire from Central Point to the side access will be paved.
Yes.
Okay.
Asphalted, yeah, asphalted. And are you doing back further for the neighbors too? Maybe.
future.
Yeah, there was some conversation. The neighbors wanted maybe some improvements on behind the gate area too, that.
That's great for the neighbors, but I don't think it doesn't relate to this, so. It's not
But
something Is
Well,
the
and
applicant
I
okay?
point that out because my client has attempted to meet with all the neighbors to address their concerns. Moving the parking was one of them. And some other things with some of the neighbors. So I know there's a couple of neighbors that had some concerns, but we believe that we've addressed all of the concerns the neighbors had with these exhibits and these professional studies.
Okay. Is the applicant okay with a condition requiring that the driveway be paved?
I think the county wanted that, and we had said that was fine. Yeah.
The county said 20 feet back from Central Point is all they require.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, that condition's fine.
Okay. That was all the questions I had. Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to testify in support of this application? If so, please click on the raise your hand button. Not seeing anybody who'd like to go first to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns, please click on the raise your hand button. Anybody want to say anything about this application? There we go. Immigrant Connection PDX. Can I get your name and address? You'll need to unmute yourself too. There you go.
I'm using a laptop at work. Name is Nancy Bennett. And I am at 22331 South Central Point Road, Oregon City.
Go ahead.
I want to be careful to not be redundant because I've submitted 3 little exhibits or whatever comments about my concerns. One main thing that has kind of been rolling around in my head since the beginning of this was the site location. And it seems to me that to impact the surrounding neighbors on the perimeter of this property, to have located this on the northeast portion of the property versus the southwest would have placed it in a space that has no immediately impacted residences. So that's just something that has been a question, and it's something that if Strava's had an opportunity or a way to change this and move it so that it doesn't affect so many people so directly, then most of my other things are in my comments and concerns. But I want to go back to the traffic study. And although I want to point out that there has been a significant impact right at the driveway that the Strava's closed. It must have been just before they bought the property. So that is a recent impact that occurred between a farm vehicle and a high-speed northbound vehible.
Where was that driveway?
The driveway used to be right, I would say just south of their current driveway.
The one that goes to the house and the barns that cluster.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And being a resident on that road, although the traffic study may show that there's not a high number of cars going there, what is significant is how fast so many vehicles do go, and the number of near misses that occur is really is significant. And those of us that live there and hear this and observe it know this to be true. And I did just have another experience within the last 4 weeks, northbound, just about this location where the driveway's at, where a northbound vehicle came out of the draw where the creek is on the south side of the property and high speed and started to overtake me, did go to pass me as a southbound truck was just cresting the hills, which the northbound vehicle could not see because of the dip. And it starts to pass me. That truck had to veer off onto the shoulder, and it was really, I mean, it was a very unnerving experience because I saw the car coming in my rearview mirror. I knew the truck was southbound, and it all happened right around me. So it is significant, and it's a difficult thing to have show up in a study that's just tracking the number of cars and the times of day that they go through that space. So I am encouraged to hear that the thing has been corrected to show 3 events a week maximum. I still feel like it significantly impacts those of us who live right in the proximity of this proposed development of a commercial development with a parking lot that is a big change to that region. And I know other wineries are nearby, but none of them are placed directly on the road and impacting their nearby neighbors. So I think that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything about this application? Going once, going twice. Okay, anything further from staff, Ms. Lord?
No, I don't believe I have anything. Thank you.
Did the county change its recommendation from a denial? Or do you have any, you're just gonna leave it as it is and
I can definitely take a look. I would probably request another week if you did want me to provide a formal recommendation. But
not required. I just wanted to give you the opportunity. Thank you.
yeah, I do think that there's a lot of compelling evidence that the applicant submitted to help support certainly the traffic issues, lighting, noise, and the impacts on the surrounding property from what I've seen.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lord. Anything further from the applicant, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Turner, if I could just real quickly, I'll show that map and show the driveway and the locations. If
The one that was closed.
yeah, then Mrs. Bennett had talked about. So the one that I'm sharing is if it's tell me when it's shown up.
Yeah, it is.
So the applicant's property is here to the left of where the red address is. That's their house and barn. Hers is on the other side here. And it was just a driveway to their house. The county approved the closure of it. It was too narrow and it wasn't a safe driveway. But that, again, that closure of that driveway has nothing to do with this winery nor the use of
I just,
Tax Law
it
305.
referenced, I wanted to know where it was.
And even putting the winery up on top of the hill where the vineyards are going to be would be closer to Mrs. Bennett's house. Where it's at farther down south here is further from her house. So, it would be, the site location has been carefully designed to be the most scenic and the most pristine, that's available out there. And then we would note that the traffic study did cover the speeds. There's a section on what speeds were identified out there and what the speed limits are and how that affects safety. So that was covered by the traffic engineer. And if you have any other questions, we're happy to answer them. Or
I don't. Does the applicant want the opportunity to submit a final written argument?
No, I think we're fine. Mr. Turner.
If I could just interject,
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, did you in the Stravas consider the email regarding system development charges and requesting maybe an average number of guests just to adjust the fees?
Well,
and if that's something you wanted to consider and take time just before you waive your argument or close the record, I just wanted to bring that up for you.
I think the average would probably end up being, probably closer to a total of, if we're going to average it out, in reality, they're not going to be lucky enough to have 3 events a week. There's not really a chance. So as you're probably talking, maybe 400 a week would be the average.
Average per event, sorry, not.
Well, you average that out. So if you have an average for these events, it'd probably be, for each event will probably be 250, the average for the bigger events. And then if the SDCs wants to take into account, wine club tastings where there's 20 or 30 people. So for the events, you're probably talking an average of about 250 people a week.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Lord, is the SDC something is there a specific number in the conditions that I need to modify given this testimony, or is this something that'll be addressed through engineering?
No, and thanks for asking. The staff who assess system development charges, they look at the approval, and if it just says we've approved maximum of X number of people per event, that's the number that they put into their system and issue fees based on. If the approval says, you know, an average of X number of people up to a maximum of Y number of people, they also consider that and they can adjust their fees accordingly. So that's why I bring it up, is just if the decision specifies that the applicants requested an average number, the fee folks can take that into consideration when they assess their fees too.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
reality is, you know, if there's going to be weddings, obviously in Oregon, you know, weather restrictive. Nobody's gonna have a outdoor wedding any time between November and February, period. So
Okay.
the
Thank you,
averages
Mr.
are
Smith.
affected.
So the applicant has waived their right to submit a final argument, so I'm going to close the record and close the hearing. I've noted, I got several emails this morning, I think 3 or 4, regarding this, which I haven't had a chance to look at. So I'm going to take this application under advisement, which means I'm going to look at those emails and everything else in the record and the testimony I heard today before I make a decision. I will make my decision and I will set up my reasoning in my written order, which I will try and get out within about 2 weeks. I will send my decision to the county. County will send it to parties of record, and I will definitely get it out before May 16th, which is the 150-day deadline imposed by state law. So that concludes our hearing. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.